All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, we're about a month away from the start of the 2024 Major League Baseball season, and there are still some notable free agents who are not signed. Blake Snell, Cody Bellinger, J.D. Martinez, Jordan Montgomery, and Matt Chapman are all still seeking contracts. And these five players have something in common as well, as aside from being unsigned right now, they're all represented by super agent Scott Boras. And you just sit back and see this, and you just got to wonder what in the world's going on. You think about Bellinger. He took that 1 year prove it deal last year with the Chicago Cubs, and Cody Bellinger had a phenomenal bounce back year. He hit 307, 26 home runs, 97 runs batted in, 20 stolen bases, and he was a big reason why that the Cubs overachieved and found themselves in playoff contention for the bulk of the year. You look at Blake Snell, and for me, the question is his price too high? I mean, you look at Snell, you can't take away from the fact that he is a two-time Cy Young Award winner. He's won the Cy Young Award in both leagues now, but teams appear to be reluctant to give him a long-term deal. And you think about Snell in his career. In 8 years, he's 71 and 55, a 3.20 ERA. But the thing is, Blake Snell is one of those guys, he'll give you 5 or 6 innings. That's it. And, for his entire career, he hasn't even sniffed 200 innings. So it's one of those where is a team really going to go out there and break the bank to sign a guy like Blake Snell? So far, they're not. You look at starting pitcher Jordan Montgomery. He came up big last year for the Texas Rangers and helping them win the World Series, but the veteran lefty is still not signed. JD Martinez, I think, is in a different category. I mean, we saw him get the 1 year deal from the Dodgers last year. Still, at this state of the game, JD can be a productive hitter. And we saw that last year for LA as he hit 271 with 33 home runs and drove in more than 100 runs batted in. And then there's Matt Chapman. Chapman last year with the Blue Jays and helping them make the playoffs. He only hit 240, but that's basically what he's done throughout his career. He is a career 240 hitter. 17 home runs, 54 runs batted in, but he did have 39 doubles. But at the end of the day, all of these guys are still out there, still available, and can contribute to a team for 2024. But for Scott Boras, and some people love him, some people hate him. But at the end of the day, he has built his reputation over the years as being a super agent, a guy who drives a hard bargain. Clearly, his job is to get the top dollar for the guys that he represents, and he's very aggressive in doing so. And I'm not going to knock him for it. But the question is, has MLB seen enough of him? Uh, for me, I'm not going to say yes, but I will say maybe they've seen enough of him for this year. I look at it like this. I think teams are off by both years and money for the clients that Scott Boras still has out there. It's one of those where you think about the big contract that a guy like Garrett Cole, another Scott Boras client, got from the Yankees several years ago to be their ace. And it's one of those where, okay, Garrett Cole, prior to the Yankees, proved that he can be an ace. And of course, during his time with the Yankees, he still has proven that he can be an ace. And he's a guy that can go deeper into games than Blake Snell can. You look at what Aaron Nola, though, just got from the Philadelphia Phillies this offseason. And, that's going to raise eyebrows for a guy like Scott Boras as well. But again, at the end of the day, with Blake Snell, I don't see teams going out there willing to break the bank long term on a guy who is yet to hit the 200 inning plateau for his career. Jordan Montgomery, he's 31 years of age. He's a lefty, okay? And it's one of those where it's kind of like, what are you going to get from Jordan Montgomery? that's the big thing, and it's kind of like the same thing with Blake Snell. It looks like it's going to be feast or famine. There's a lot of teams out there that could really use a JD Martinez in the middle of the lineup. I, for one, felt like each this offseason as well as the previous offseason, I felt like the New York Mets, in my opinion, could have gone out there and used a JD Martinez on a possible 1 or 2 year deal, as they need protection behind Pete Alonso in the middle of their lineup. There are other teams out there as well that can use JD Martinez, especially with this universal designated hitter. I think Martinez can go out there and still contribute with his bat in a big way. Matt Chapman, he's a guy who is coming off of a Gold Glove last year for the Blue Jays, but I think his 240 average career wise could be scaring some teams off. And speaking of scaring teams off, you look at Cody Bellinger. It's one of those where I don't think the teams are on board with giving him a long-term deal as well, because which Cody Bellinger are you going to get? Are you going to get the guy that in his first 3 years in the league with the Dodgers, he went from being the National League's Rookie of the Year to the National League's MVP? And then, of course, he had that big time fall off afterwards. And his last 3 years in LA were not that pretty, but then he had to bounce back, prove it year again last year with the Chicago Cubs. If you're Bellinger, you definitely don't want another prove it deal. Would you be willing to take maybe a 2 year deal? I'm not sure, but the clock is ticking at this point, because we're a little bit less than a month away from the start of the season, and clearly, these guys want to get into camps and go out there and play. So it's going to be interesting to see if Boris comes down on his asking price for his clients, or if teams are going to go out there and meet what Boris is asking for. I don't think it's going to be the teams, shifting, because I feel like if teams really wanted these guys, they would have been signed by now. And typically, the hot stove really, heats up around Christmas and New Year's, as, teams have really, gotten an idea of who's going to be, on their spring training roster. And you figure the fact that, we're in the final days of February, teams and players have reported the spring training facilities both in Florida and Arizona, and these guys are still not out there. It's not a good look. I do think uh, that somebody will sign these guys, but it looks like we're going to have a game of chicken right here. And speaking of Scott Boras, does this bode anything for next offseason? Because two of his clients are set to become free agents. You got Pete Alonso with the Mets and Juan Soto with the New York Yankees. And remember, Boras has represented Soto for a long time now. And of course, you know, the Washington Nationals a couple of years ago had 400 plus million on the table for Juan Soto, and he and Scott Boras turned that down. But what's going to happen if Soto goes out there and has a big year? Is he going to get more? We got to wait and see. And what's going to be the market for Pete Alonso? But nonetheless, this is a very interesting game, a dicey game right here, if you will, as it's a battle of wits. Sometimes you get teams that give in to Scott Boras, and sometimes you have teams that don't. And like I said before, sometimes with his clients, it's really hit or miss. We've seen some of his guys live up to their contracts, and we've also seen some guys that Scott Boras represented, and they went right downhill. You think about Chris Bryant and the big deal he got from the Colorado Rockies several years ago. Chris Bryant has not come close to being the guy that he was with the Chicago Cubs for a variety of reasons. One of them being injuries. There's a list of guys. I was just highlighting Chris Bryant there, just as one, but nonetheless, with the start of the season right around the corner, it's going to be interesting to see which teams go out there and sign these guys. They're going to get signed. I do believe it, and I do think that they're going to be signed sooner rather than later. But again, at this stage of the game, it's an eye opener and a head scratcher. But nonetheless, that's the nature of the beast, and that's the business of baseball. So, folks, that's going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 pounds of sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.